Hi everybody and welcome to my channel, which feels very weird to say because I never thought I'd actually get here. And yet here we are. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So before I get into the normal content of my channel, which will likely be vlogs or sit-down videos or a combination of both about my daily life and passions and hobbies, I really wanted to introduce myself. And I was thinking about how I could do that best. And I didn't feel much for the general sit down and spew out random facts about me because I could give you the basic rundown. I'm Margot. I'm 21 years old, I'm Dutch, I live in a little town below Rotterdam and I'm a student at Leiden University. I'm in a relationship and I could go on and on about random facts about me really. Instead, I figured why not introduce you to the 4 aspects of my life that you'll get to see most on this channel. The writer, the reader, the photographer and the student. Those are all things that keep me busy in my day-to-day life. And they're all things that you'll likely run into. Especially because I want to use this channel as a way to document my life, kind of. I want to be raw and real and open with you guys instead of only highlighting certain aspects of my life. And these are the 4 things that I think if you were to vlog my daily life, you'd run into eventually. A lot, actually. So without further ado, let's get into the writer. I wanted to start with the writer aspect of my life because I think that that's the passion that fueled this channel. I started a bookstagram about 4 months ago. And from that I started venturing into the possibility of perhaps linking a channel to that. And because my bookstagram is very much focused on a combination of me as a reader and me as a writer, I wanted to do the same here. So hence we're starting at the writer. Though I guess we all can understand that before you're a writer, you're a reader. But I digress. Let me get into the writer. I started writing when I was about 13 years old. I've always been passionate about stories and about the possibility of living into those stories myself, and as a 13-year-old, my stories sucked. I have a few of them still in a box at my bedside table and they're not really good. There's very little depth, they're predictable, and I guess there are more ways to escape the real world than to tell stories. I preferred spending time with pages of a book than with people at that age. And I preferred thinking about these fantastic worlds and their magic and the mythical concept of them and what I would do if I were in that situation. So I started as a writer at about 13 years old. I'm sure there's stuff from before that time, but I think it's good for everybody involved that I can't find it anymore. So let's stick to 13. And in the beginning it was mostly fan fiction, to be fair. I would look at a story somebody else wrote and I'd go, okay, so what if there was an additional character in that? Or what if the story went differently? And that grew, and I continued the tradition of writing until I started writing my own stories, which I think happened about 17. And I think it was also at that time that I realized I wanted to pursue this as a possible job. So now, at 21, I am a freelance writer. Which is weird to say because that's something I started in quarantine after I lost my job, and I didn't think I would do that. To be fair, the same with this channel, I was deadly terrified to put my writing out into the world for criticism. Because up until then, the only thing that I've written had been living in my head or in my pages or on my computer, and it had never been criticized by the outside world. But I guess when you have a drive and when you have a passion, it can only stay inside for so long. And hence, I'm now a freelance writer. I like saying passionate storyteller or something along those lines because I just think that captures the feeling a bit more. But that means that I've been writing for about 8 years now. And I've gone from writing fan fiction to writing my own work to trying to get my own work published. I'm currently working on a poetry bundle I hope to publish this year. I did a cover review recently on my Instagram and a title review at the same time, and I'm just overwhelmed by the love that it received. I'm really excited to release it, though it's also terrifying because putting poetry out into the world is kind of like burying your soul and then just going, please don't step on it. Please be mindful of like the pain through the cracks. Regardless, I hope that if somebody reads my poetry and one day they find strength in it or they find joy in it or something along those lines, they'll let me know, because I would love for that, for my work to do that to somebody the way others' work has done that for me. And I guess that's the writing aspect of my life. Though I could also add to that my current work in progress, besides the poetry bundle, is a fantasy book. It is a fantasy book full of magic and friendship and family and just mystic. And I really like it. But it has definitely taken a back seat as compared to the poetry bundle that is up there. That's why I'm pointing up there. Because I'm just working on getting that published first, and then I'll continue writing this story. And I think that would be the writer me. So let's get into the thing that started the writing. The reader. I have always been reading. My mother is an avid reader and she sparked that love for books and reading in me. I have stories from when I was younger that my parents told me that just explain how much I love reading. One of them is the fact that when I was younger and we would be driving to family, which they live across the country, so that's like a 1 or 2 hour drive depending on what side the family would be going to. And if we were driving late at night, I would stay awake by staring out the window. And my mom always wondered, what is she staring at? And after a while she figured it out. I was reading the road signs, which old me does not understand, but apparently little me thought it was amazing. And that's how I stayed awake. Another story I remember is my dad telling me that when I was younger and they would come up to read me stories, like bedtime stories, I would end up reading the bedtime story to them, which I don't think is the ideal situation as a parent, because I can't imagine those stories are very thrilling. But little me loved it. Every second I enjoyed. And that's kind of why I can very securely say, with the utmost confidence, I've been reading for so long that I don't quite remember a time when I wasn't reading. And that's the amount of love I have for reading, because that has only grown. Though I don't think my reading taste has changed that much. I definitely read more difficult books now, but fantasy is still my favorite genre. Other favorite genres are poetry and classics. I love mystery novels and like detective stories. I enjoy non-fiction, though I would like to read it more than I do. And I think I would love to give historical fiction a try, because I've read 1 or 2 historical fiction stories and they're generally really good and I really enjoy them. And then I just don't read any more of them, which I don't get why. So I think another story or genre that I would love to read more of is sci-fi. It's very adjacent to fantasy and people tend to go fantasy and sci-fi. You know, they're always mentioned together. And I definitely read way more fantasy than I read sci-fi, but I also really enjoy sci-fi. Though, much like with historical fiction, I don't read it nearly enough. If you were to ask me if I had a favorite book, I think my immediate answer would be Lord of the Rings. I read that when I was young and I have my mother's old copy, and that story is just such a comfort story for me. I can always go back to it and I'll always enjoy it, and I love the characters and the development and I love the story. So that's one that I'll always answer. But the thing about me as a reader is I don't quite like picking favorites. I'm very much a mood reader, so the books I pick to read are determined about how I feel at that exact moment. If I'm sad, I'll probably pick a sad book. If I'm happy, I'll pick a more happy book. If I feel a certain way, I pick a certain book. That's why I don't really keep TBRs either. My to be read list is more of a, oh, that's interesting, or I would like to get into that one day list, instead of a TBR list. Like this book and then that book and then that book. I don't keep to a set schedule. It's the same way with my favorites. Like Lord of the Rings is a favorite I'll always have. And I know that because every time somebody asks me what's a favorite book, I'm like, well, one of them is Lord of the Rings. But you can already hear me say one of them. And that's because I don't like it. I don't like saying that's my specific favorite, because there's so many good books out there and I've read already a lot of them. Well, obviously I'm not near to the like final book, like that's gonna be impossible, but I've read a lot of books and there's a lot of books in there that I love. Septimus Heap is one of them. I loved reading Six of Crows. I am currently reading Priory of the Orange Tree and I already know I'm going to add that to my favorite list. Like there's no way it won't be. I'm one section in and it's amazing. I loved reading Percy Jackson. My favorite my favorite series when I was younger was probably Ranger's Apprentice, and the spin-off is also really good. Those are all books that I love for vastly different reasons. So when somebody asks me, pick a favorite book, I'm like, it's kind of like you're asking me to pick a favorite kid. I just can't do that. No thank you. I'll give you 3 of them. So I recently had that as well when I did a forever favorite 5 tag on my Instagram. And I was just like, well, this I can do because it's 5 favorite books that are forever my favorites, which they are. But it's not saying I have one favorite and all the other amazing books I've read aren't my favorite. So the books I picked for that, I think, were Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code. I picked Lord of the Rings, obviously. I picked Magic, which is book 1 of the Septimus Heap series. I picked Six of Crows, and I also picked Alice in Wonderland, and in that copy is also Alice Through the Looking Glass, which is also a really good story. Those were forever favorite 5 books for me. Like, I have way more than 5, but those are 5 where I'm like, yeah, I know I'll always be able to go back to you and I'll always love you. So that's kind of how I am with picking favorites. I don't really like it. And that's why you can hear, if you ever ask me, what's your favorite book? You'll probably get the answer of, well, 1 of them, or like, here's 3 of them. Instead of, yeah, this is my favorite book, that's it. Like, I don't really do that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. Like, don't get me wrong. If that's something you can do and you have that one favorite book, that's amazing. But I just can't do that, because every time I say, like, I like this book, my mind's like, but what about that book with that concept that you really enjoyed? And yeah, that's me as a reader. I'm a mood reader, so even my favorites get determined by my moods. As you heard me mention, I have an Instagram dedicated to book things. It is technically not a bookstagram, I think, because it is partially me as a writer and partially me as a reader. But if you want to find it, it's tt.talkingtext. Don't worry about writing it down. I'll put it in the description as well. And it's just a combination of my photography side, because I love taking those pictures, my writer side, because I love writing the captions and telling a little story, and my reader side, because I love sharing the books I read and the passion I have for them. And I love talking with people as well about the books we read. I'm currently doing a read-along with a friend I met via Instagram of the Priory of the Orange Tree. And yeah, I just really enjoy the community there. So I think I can say that's me as a reader. You know my favorite genres, which, again, multiple genres. Mood. You know my favorite books. You know I'm a mood reader. And I think that's it. So let's get into the photographer. So, me as a photographer. Again, it's a hobby that I've had for a long time. I've always liked taking pictures. And I've always enjoyed capturing a moment and telling a story through that picture, which is a recurring theme for me. Like, storytelling is a large part of my life. And things that I remember as a younger girl that drew me into photography were just the aesthetics of taking pictures I found amazing, and the ability to just capture that moment and then revisit it later and still have those memories clear as day as to what happened in that specific moment of the picture. I used Instagram excessively for a 15-year-old. And I would meet up with girls from my high school to take pictures, and I would borrow my mother's camera for that. So it kind of went from using my phone to just take pictures of travel to meeting up with other people that enjoyed photography and borrowing my mom's camera for that. And then I would just borrow my mom's camera for travel as well. And then I bought my own camera. I bought my own camera about around my graduation. I was gonna go to Namibia for my graduation trip, and I bought this camera. A Sony a6000. I do not regret buying this camera at all. I love it. I still use it. It's been 3 years now? 3.5? Anyways, I bought that camera back then specifically to take landscape and animal pictures, because we were going to Namibia and I knew that we would be going to the national park there, and I would be going with my parents. Now you might think, why not borrow your mother's camera again? Well, my mom also likes photography. So us fighting over the camera just didn't seem like a great way to start the holiday. So instead I saved up and I bought this baby. Seriously, I love this. This is my baby. That camera is a new addition to the photography but also videography side of my life now. But this one is just, I'll treasure it forever. There's something special about buying your very first personal camera. And so when I was younger, I usually took pictures of nature and of people, which is just the friends that I would do photography with. And then as I got my own camera, I started taking more pictures of nature and architecture. I was a TTO student, so that's a bilingual program during high school, and that meant that I went to England every year. So every year I would take architecture photography. I love taking travel shots and just, again, capturing that moment and sharing that story afterwards with my parents. Like, this is where I went, this is what happened, and this is the picture I took there. And then that kind of stuck. So my main themes in photography are nature and architecture. But recently I've also been rediscovering my passion for photo shoots. Mostly with friends. I've done a self-shoot in quarantine, which, interesting experience. I don't quite know what I think of the pictures. But I have also done a few photo shoots with non-friends, and that's just an amazing experience. I love the idea of somebody trusting me enough to take pictures of them and to share those with them. And that's just an experience I will never forget. Which I guess is why I started my freelance photography. I am currently a freelance photographer, and I do photo shoots and I do product photography, which is also something I've added to my repertoire recently. And if you want to see more of that, you can find me on Instagram as mmphotographics, which is partially Dutch and partially English in spelling. So it's mm and then photo as in Dutch, so it's FOTO, and then graphics the English way. I'll also put it down in the description, so don't worry if you didn't catch that, or if you're like, no, go back, you're going too fast. It's down there, don't worry. I use my Instagram for photography mainly as a portfolio. I'm just sharing pictures on there that I particularly love or that have fond memories for me. And because of that, and because of my freelance job, I started developing my own style recently. I started teaching myself how to use Photoshop and Lightroom, and I am following a course on fine art portraiture that I got for my birthday. Best thing ever. And I've just been evolving that. It's just a passion that's grown into a job, and I love that. I love doing something that I'm so passionate about and getting to share that with other people. I think that's the main thing behind all of the things I do, is I want to share with people what I love, and I want to share with the world what I love. So from that photography love morphed this, a love for videography. I've always enjoyed YouTube. I watch probably more YouTube than I watch Netflix. I have a few channels that I watch religiously because they're vloggers, and I love just getting a glimpse into their daily life. And I've always been interested in the possibility of trying that myself, of vlogging or kind of like capturing moments of your life on camera that you can go back and watch later. And that's what I'm doing now. So that's what this channel is going to be about. It's going to be about me and my life and the things I enjoy and would love to share with you. And the things that I just want to look back on later and think, you know, I did that. Including this video, because I'm kind of terrified and nervous and probably rambling a lot. And I hope it's not too bad, but I'll just see when I'm editing. So I think that's photography for me. I think that kind of captures the scope. I'm still very much, while writer me and reader me are very much established, I think photography for me is still being developed. There is a very solid base there, but I'm still trying out new things every day. This is one of them, and I like that. So let's get into the last aspect I want to introduce you to. Let's get into the student. I like learning. I've always enjoyed accumulating knowledge. I've always found a variety of subjects highly interesting. And that made picking hard. When you're supposed to pick in high school which direction you're gonna take, I was just sitting there like, I like this, but I also like that. That is nice too, and then there's that which just tickles my interest. So picking has always been a bit of a, what am I gonna do? Because I like learning, so I found so many things interesting. And then you kind of have to ask yourself, well, what do you want to do at the end of the day, and what is just an interest? Because those interests you can pursue outside of school. And I ended up I picked psychology. I'm currently a third-year bachelor student at the university in Leiden, which means I'm in my last year. I'm writing my thesis, and I'm slowly rounding up 3 years of bachelor studies, which is a bit weird to say because it doesn't feel like 3 years. Especially not with the last year, because I've been home for a year because of COVID, which I'm sure many of us have been, and it's just been a bit weird. Not that I mind it, because I like having my own rhythm, and COVID has really allowed me to foster that own rhythm, but still it's a bit weird. I haven't seen any of my fellow students over the past year. A lot of my friends have gone home because I do follow an international course, so I'm not just doing the Bachelor in Psychology, I'm doing the International Bachelor in Psychology, meaning that my German friends are back in Germany, and I have a friend who's back in Italy now, and it's a bit weird because of that. Besides that, I'm also following a minor in criminology. When I picked my studies, I was very much torn between psychology on the one hand and then criminology on the other hand, and I ended up picking for psychology, and now I'm doing both. So I think I picked well. I really just enjoy and have enjoyed the past 3 years of my study, and now I'm pursuing a minor in criminology as well, and I'm hoping to pursue a master's in criminology. So whereas a lot of people say, well, then maybe you should have started with criminology, I think I picked right because I loved the past 3 years. It's been the most interesting, and I don't think I would have enjoyed it as much if I went the other way around. So that's the stuff I study at the moment. I am a late studier, 100% night owl. I do not function in the morning. Like, I take morning classes sometimes and they'll help me wake up, but yeah, I just don't really function in the morning. As compared to my boyfriend, who is very much a morning person, we have a very interesting morning rhythm because he'll be up and I'll just be laying in the bed like, oh, I don't want to get up, leave me here, or just go do your thing. Like, that's our general morning when we get up together. My body just doesn't function before like 9:30, 10ish. And morning classes I can follow just fine. I'll be able to sit down, I'll follow the class, and it will help wake me up, and I'll still be able to contribute normally. But I can't summarize in the morning. I can't sit down and do the normal stuff that I can do in the evening. And while a lot of people might say, well, try to get your morning rhythm in order, I have tried. And believe me when I say that me getting up at 8:30 is a win. So I take my mornings slow. Even if I'm awake, I take them slow. And sometimes I study until 11 p.m. and then I crash and then I wake up at like 10:30 the next day. I'm totally fine with that because it works for me. And I think that's one of the better things that COVID has brought me, because I've spent the past year at home. I've been able to figure out what really works for me in a rhythm. And I've now managed to shift my morning rhythm into like waking up at 8:30 and then maybe spending a little time in bed, but usually I get out of bed before 9:30. And then I just do practical things. So I'll plan my day, or I'll follow a class, or I'll write down things I need done, or I'll check deadlines, I clean my room, stuff like that. And then in the evening I really sit down and get to it. And that's kind of my rhythm as a student. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that we're gonna run into, me as a student. But I'm just sitting at home most of the time now, so there's not a lot of interesting things to share. I think another thing you will run into is that I divide my week into sections. So for example, Mondays are my practical days. I struggle, just as I struggle starting up in the mornings, I struggle starting up a week. So I made a schedule for me that allows me to do basically assignments, essays, anything of the sort that has a deadline I do on Monday. I have a bachelor meeting every Monday at the moment for my thesis, and then I have one every Thursday morning for my thesis until we get like the rhythm going, and then we're just gonna go to only Mondays. I do generally a lot of my like lectures on Tuesdays, and then it's just a variety of classes or not classes, because most of my courses, well actually all of my courses at the moment are minor classes, which means that as a minor student I'm not always forced to attend every single course. Meaning I have lectures and work groups, and work groups used to be mandatory for me as a psychology student, but currently as a minor criminology student they're not. I can dictate whether or not I want to go for myself, which I enjoy, because that means that if I'm really swamped during a certain week, I'll just not go to those classes. I'll make sure I get the notes from my peers, and then I'll go next week. And then that's the same with the like mandatory assignments for those classes. If I'm not going, I generally don't have to hand them in, so that makes it a bit easier on me as well. And that way I can really navigate doing and my thesis and having two businesses and doing a minor, because it gives me the space to like organize my own life. So I think that's student me. I think there's not much else to add to the fact that like I'm a night owl, so I study late. I don't get up early. I am doing two studies at the moment, one of which is just a thesis at the moment because there's no classes left. I passed all my courses for that one already. And that's me. So I guess I'm gonna wrap up this video now, because I don't think there's much else to tell you at the moment. Those were the 4 aspects that I wanted to use to introduce myself, and I hope that now we're reaching the end of the video, you feel like you know me more than when you started it. That would be the ideal situation. But obviously there's like 1,001 things I already forgot to share with you guys, and if you have a question for me, or if you just want to see more of me before the next video is out, you can find me in my other socials, which are my Instagrams or my website. Both will be in the description. But another option is for you to just drop your question in the comments, and I'll try to answer every single one of you guys. The same is with if you have any thoughts or tips and tricks or directions you would like to see my channel go, don't be afraid to drop that into the comments as well. It would mean a lot to me and I would love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this video, which I hope you did, then consider leaving it a like. That would mean a lot to me, and it actually just shows me that people enjoyed watching this video, so that would be really cool. And if I interested you enough to the point where you want to see more of me, consider following along for the ride, as I try to figure out how to work with YouTube and recording and editing and all the other things. And I guess that would be my first video. So I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I liked recording it, and I guess I will catch you in the next one. Bye!